Okay guys, here's what I'm doing. I have, since I've been doing this keto diet thing for a year now, I'm down 2 pant sizes, which means I have many pairs of pants that don't fit anymore. Same way with shorts. Most of these are, worn to the point of just being threadbare. So, it's not something I want to put in a donate box or anything. But at the same time, there's a lot of material on these pants that I keep thinking I should do something with. So, I was thinking about it and wondering what to do, and then I thought, wait a minute. These pockets. The pockets on these shorts gave me an idea. Why not do one of those vest things that you see like fly fishermen wear, or hikers, or they go by a number of different names. Travel vests, like fishing vests, shooting vests, more specialized versions of them they call tactical vests. But you know what I'm talking about, the vest with all the pockets on it. Be a good way to repurpose the material, repurpose the pockets. So I thought, yeah, nice project. So what I've done is I've actually gone through and I've pulled 3 pairs of pants and 1 pair of shorts, and I've salvaged all of the material, plus waistbands, zippers. I saved the buttons, basically anything that might prove to be usable in this project I saved. And actually, up until this point, the only thing I've really done is I've spent a lot of time with a seam ripper, just undoing seams and pulling threads and so forth. So there's been very little go on with regard to actually doing this project. It's more been prep work on this project. But that's kind of what I'm thinking of, and I thought, fire up the camera and get this on video. Okay guys, here's the pattern I'm going to be working from. I actually made 2 patterns using a suit jacket that I have that currently fits, and I like the fit of, so I basically just laid that jacket out and I made a pattern for a front panel. Then I have another pattern somewhere for a back panel. And the difference between the two is typically when it comes to vests, there's not as much cutout for the armhole on the back side of a vest as there is on the front side. So that's why I made 2 different patterns. But this is the front panel. And what you can see here is I've got things kind of divided up into sections because I'm working with a limited amount of material. I'm not going to have a piece of material this big. And so what I've done is I've thought, well, I could, take this section here and split it up in between 2 pieces, and take this section, split it up between 2 pieces, and then have a piece up there for the shoulder. And then I wasn't really sure, like with the shoulder, should I do this, kind of V shape, which is kind of more of a Western vest look, or if I should just go straight across. I haven't really decided yet. Probably for this situation, I may end up just going straight across. And that's basically because by going straight across, it maximizes the area up in here for doing, pockets and so forth. So here's my pocket. This will be a lower pocket, so it'll be located, roughly in about that area. Then what I thought I would do is where these 2 sections meet, I would do like a zippered pocket of some sort with the repurposed zippers. Then up here above, I have, the other pockets and things that I took off of that pair of shorts, but I've also got additional material from those shorts as well. So whatever it is I decide to do. And of course, I had to have picked the dingiest pair of shorts that I could find, because the longer I work on this project, the more grease stains I keep finding. which I don't know why I let that concern me, because it's the first time I use this vest to actually do a project, it's going to get filthy dirty. So anyway, so I'll have, some kind of pocket, something up here, these pockets down here, the little zippered thing here for a zippered pocket. Then I thought what I would do is use this waistband material and just do the band around the bottom of it. And so I thought, decent little project. Okay guys, let's talk a little bit about zippers. Now, this zipper was one of the zippers that I salvaged out of those pants. This is actually the finished zipper assembly. This is actually the only actual construction work that I've done on this project yet. I just took 2 strips of material from a pair of those pants, and I sewed each strip on either side of the zipper, and then folded it back and sewed it again, and then I put 2 little bars. Really? 2 little bars of stitches along each end of the zipper just to secure it a little bit more. And so what you have is you have a little pocket, and inside that pocket is the zipper. And then what will happen is, on this part and on this part, the bottom part will attach here, the top part will attach here. Well guys, let's talk about sewing machines while I try and run a line of stitches here with my helper. This is a Singer, may have been sold by Sears. Singer Model 111, and it's called a walking foot sewing machine, or walking foot industrial sewing machine. Now, I don't know whether you can see it if Mr. Gabby here has got the view mark blocked with his paw, but not only does the mechanism under the material move back and forth to move the material, but this foot right here that the needle goes through, actually the whole needle arm itself moves back and forth. That's why they call it a walking foot. So the material pulls from the top and from the bottom, and that's why you can sew very heavy materials, multiple layers of materials with this machine, because it's pulling from both sides, so things have less of a tendency to get bunched up. Now, you might also notice I'm turning this device by hand, and that's because unlike a regular home sewing machine, this device has what's called a clutch motor. Clutch motor works exactly like the clutch on a manual transmission car. The motor spins at all time, and when you want to engage the machine and make the machine work, you engage the clutch, and the friction transfers the rotation of the motor to the mechanism. The drawback of that is, now while that can be very fast and very powerful, the drawback is, remember what it was like learning to drive a manual transmission. It's the same thing with running one of these machines. Very finicky. Where are you going? Takes a lot of skill, a lot of patience. So what I find is it's easier to disengage the belt. Here's the belt, and just turn it by hand. It's just easier, particularly if you're just sewing just a short little bit like this zipper. You might also notice too that I'm holding the zipper in place with blue painter's tape. Traditionally you would use dress pins or something for that. Tape works just as good. Now the only problem with turning this thing by hand is eventually shoulder gets tired. I did a bag for work, sort of like my everyday carry bag, and maybe I'll take a few pictures of it and post it. But by the time I got done sewing that thing, and I did the whole thing by hand, turning the machine by hand, my shoulder was so messed up, my back was so messed up, I thought I was going to have to go to physical therapy. So I turn a little bit, and then I give my shoulder a break. Then I turn a little bit and give my shoulder a break. And that's, basically the skinny on industrial sewing machines. All right, guys, let's talk about project planning and project layout. It's always important if you're going to do a project, and this is really for any project. This is a, sewing project, woodworking project, anything that you do, you really need to plan out ahead all of the steps that you're going to do, or as many of the steps that you're going to do as possible ahead of time, so that you can figure out ahead of time where the potential problems and pitfalls are. Now, what could be some potential problems in a project like this? Well, if you've ever looked at a suit jacket, you'll notice that on the inside of a suit jacket, there's a strip of material that goes up the inside that is the same material that's on the outside of the jacket. And that's done for a number of reasons. Number one, it's decorative. It just puts a decorative edge on the edge of the jacket. But it also is a place where the liner of the jacket attaches to. Now, there isn't going to be a liner in this vest. And so when I put that strip up the edge, which I will do because that also hides all of the seam work and the sewing for the zipper, then the only thing I'm going to be able to do with that strip of material is to actually stitch it right to the front of the vest, which means that there's going to be a line of stitches that's going to go up the front of the jacket or the front of the vest that might otherwise not appear to have any explanation, but the explanation is it's holding that back panel on. Well, since there's going to be this line of stitches go up, the front of the vest, then I got to make sure that I don't locate a pocket too far over, or something on top too far over, or the zipper. I got to make sure that I, put the zipper on and I move it over this way far enough to clear that line of stitches. Seams. You can be very lazy with a project if the project's going to have a liner inside, because the liner hides all the seams. There's not going to be a liner on this project, so I have to get very creative with the seams. There's nothing wrong with seeing a seam, and what I mean by seeing the seam is, when I piece all of these things together, where they are pieced together, there's going to be flaps and material that will be on the inside of the vest. Now, granted, you'll never see them when I'm wearing this thing, but you'll see them if I take it off and so forth. Not a big deal, but if I can do the design in such a way as to hide as many of the seams as possible, then I won't have, there'll just be less unsightliness, later on in the project. Now, here's one of the ways that I can do that. This panel down here, I mentioned that I was going to have a zippered opening here. Well, what I can do is I can take this whole area and I can actually make this two panels or two plies, a front panel and a back panel, that when put together like this, front and back, they form a pocket. But the additional advantage of that is if I take the two seams and I butt them together, they'll be hidden inside the pocket. So that's one way I can very conveniently hide that seam. Now, this seam up here, there's not going to be a whole lot I can do with, because this is going to be one layer thick, one ply. So you can see here on the plan where I squiggled that seam out, I may not do that seam, because if I can find a piece of material in these pants, two of them this big, really, lay down. 2 of them this big, I won't need that seam. Yeah, I know, you're helping, I know. And you're still wet. The shoulders. Double ply the shoulders. And that way the connection between the shoulder and this piece of material will be sandwiched between the 2 plies up there. So again, planning will dictate, how you end up approaching a project. Another thing, yeah, everyone's seeing how cute you are. Another thing to think about is hardware will also dictate your design. Case in point, zippers. I could only find a zipper in this color, which is still not even a close match to those other zippers, but close enough. Oh, stop. But I could only find a 22-inch zipper, which means, I had to alter a little bit my design to accommodate a 22-inch zipper. I was shooting for a 20-inch zipper, but I had to change a little bit my design.
All right, guys, I haven't done a really good job yet of explaining, and I don't know whether I've done this at all, of explaining how I handle seams. And a seam is any place where you attach one piece of fabric to another. And so what I did was I just took these 2 scraps of fabric and I sewed them together just to show you how I handle seams. There's a number of different ways that you can do this, but they all involve taking 2 pieces of material, taking the facing sides of the material and putting them together, and then sewing them together. And so when you're done and you open it up, you have a seam. Pretty simple stuff. And then what you can do is you can then dress your seam in a number of different ways. Now you can leave a seam just like that. In fact, here is a seam from one of the pant legs that I disassembled. And what you'll see is, it's the exact same seam. And then underneath, what they've done is they've taken a serger machine and they've just dressed the flap of fabric on the inside with a serger, and that's all there is to it. It's done. Now, what I like to do is I like to put some additional stitching on the outside of the seam, and it's partly decorative and partly structural. And so what I'll do is I'll take, after I finish sewing the inside, cat's baying out the window, I then choose one side of the seam, and it doesn't matter which side, and then I'll run a set of stitches right up the very edge of the material, and then I'll step back maybe about 1/4 of an inch, and I'll run another set of stitches. And to show you an example of that, here is a panel that I made for that motorcycle jacket project, and unfortunately you can probably tell it is just coated in cat hair. I made, I think, 2 sets of these panels, one to use and one to have as a spare, just in case I messed up the first one. I ended up, I think, using both spares. In fact, I think there was one of the panels I ended up having to make 3 times, and when I get back to that project, I'm going to have to make another panel again, because unfortunately this is the last good panel that I have, but it's the one on the other side of the jacket that I have to remake. But anyway, but here you can see where I did a seam and basically just sewed 2 bits of black denim together. It's a little bit tricky sewing a curved seam like that. I think I covered that actually in that video series on that motorcycle jacket. And then you see here, I've got 2 sets of decorative yellow stitching running up the seam. And again, partly structural and partly decorative. Most denim garments will have this double seam structure, or double seam effect. Now, in some of the videos that you've seen so far, sitting back against the wall on this one table over here is an antique Singer sewing machine. And I specifically bought that machine just to set it up with yellow thread to do this seam work or stitch work. In fact, I think I demonstrate that in that motorcycle jacket project series. Yeah, so I picked that up off Craigslist. I think I paid like $25 for it, just so I could have something specifically to do the stitch with, because I wanted to have one machine to do regular structural stitching, and then this one set aside just to do the decorative stitching, just to make things go a lot quicker. Now I can do that with my big industrial machine. Refocus the camera here a little bit. I do the exact same thing, but since I'm not switching thread collars, I can do it all with this machine. Man, I lubed this chair and it's still squeaking. I also have a variety of different presser feet that I can use. I have a one-sided presser foot if I need to get really close to the edge of a seam, and particularly if I'm getting up close to something like a zipper or something like that and I need to allow additional clearance, I could put this one-sided presser foot on. But really all I do is I just line up the edge of the walking foot with the edge of the material, then I step it back about 1/4 of an inch and I run the second seam. So it's pretty simple stuff. Again, I don't think I had explained that or explained it very well, but that's how I'm handling all the seam work on this vest. So let's get back on this. Well, guys, I've got to take care of a quick matter of housekeeping before I continue. When I took those cargo shorts apart, I basically destroyed all the stitching. That thing was made to survive a nuclear explosion, I think. Those were some well-made shorts, but to get these pocket flaps off, I basically just had to destroy all the stitches. So I went ahead and just removed all the threading completely with the intention of replacing it. Well, now I have to go through along all the edges and replace this double line of stitching around all the edges. Not a big deal. I basically just have to follow the original stitch lines, but again, housekeeping, just something I've got to take care of. So after that, I should be ready to start sewing some pockets on. All right, there it is. You can see the stitching. Not real hard to do. You just follow the holes from the old stitches, and yeah, it goes pretty quickly. So I'll get the other one done, and then we can start sewing some pockets on. Well, guys, it's time to sew some pockets on, and there's really no hard and fast rules about how to do this. Just get it located as best I can on this lower panel. So edge where the zipper is going to be. This will be that line of stitches holding that back panel on. This down here is the line where the lower waistband will be. And of course up here we're up into the zipper and so forth. So really it just needs to be kind of located in this general area. Off of this line, of course, because we don't want to interfere with that line of stitches. We don't want it too far this way or it'll be wrapping around to the, way around to the side. So I want to get it as close to this line and then just kind of centrally located between, this seam and the waistband line down here. So at this point, it's really just eyeballing is all I'm doing. And I think right about like that, it's going to be a pretty good line. So yeah, I'm going to sew these things on. Now let me show you one other thing that I'm going to have to be careful of when I sew these pockets. These pockets are, they have like an accordion flap on one side, but they only have it on one side. And in fact, trying to think of, since the accordion flap is only on one side, now I have to decide, do I want the accordion flap facing the front or do I want it facing the back? And I think I want the accordion flap facing the back. So I'm actually going to swap this one with the other pocket. But let me show you what I'm going to have to do first with this accordion flap. Now, tell you what, let me take the flap off here. This part of the pocket and this part of the pocket, I'll just sew right along the edge. But the accordion flap, I'll have to sew, not here, but down here. And so what I'm going to have to do is I'll have to, sew the accordion flap down first, but leave about, say, 3/4 of an inch or so that I can lift it up and then tuck this part under it to sew the rest. You see what I'm saying? Because this flap of material goes under the accordion flap, so I can't sew the accordion flap all the way to the end, or else I won't be able to tuck this under. So a little bit of logistical timing there. So yeah, I'll sew it down to about, like I said, about 3/4 of the way down, and then I'll tuck all that under and then sew the rest of the pocket. No big deal. But I'm going to get these swapped out and get them sewed on, then I'll just show you the final product. Alright guys, there we go. Lower front panels with the pockets sewed on. Don't know whether you can tell, but my spacing on my zippers is a little bit off. If you look at the one there on the right, you see that the zippered area, it corresponds roughly right over top of the pocket. On the one on the left, it's shifted a little bit to the left. If I wanted to be a perfectionist about this, I would disconnect that zipper and move it over. Yeah, I'm not going to. What's a, 1/2 inch of space to one side? Nobody will notice it unless I point it out. So anyway, I'm going to kind of call it a day on this. I'll pick it up tomorrow and I'll bring you guys along.